Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a really disturbing file from late 2021. It sent, well, genuine chills through the Hollywood community.
Yeah.
A tragedy known just by its location. Apartment 8641.
It's a devastating case, really is. It involves two young women, Christy Giles and Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola. They were, really hitting their stride both professionally and personally.
Right. Successful, vibrant lives.
Exactly. And seemingly secure in a city that, let's be honest, can be pretty volatile. What our sources show is this picture of fun night out that just spirals into this unimaginable crime, all hidden behind the walls of like an exclusive apartment building.
So our mission today, what we want to do, is get past those initial shock headlines. We really need to unpack the timeline, piece by piece.
Yeah, it's crucial.
And look at the evidence. Some of it almost found by accident, gathered by their family and friends who just refused to accept the official story they were first given.
That's a key part, their refusal.
And understand how the forensics, the lab work, eventually shifted this whole thing from being called an overdose to a double murder investigation. And I think what's really critical here is understanding that gap, between the public image of this wealthy Hollywood producer and the, frankly, terrifying reality of his alleged predatory behavior.
And what really stands out again and again as you look through the details is the family's determination, especially Christy's husband, Jan. His immediate suspicion right from the start, based on knowing his wife and, importantly, knowing the suspect's reputation. That's really what kickstarted the deeper investigation later on.
Okay, so let's start with the victims. Christy Giles. She was 24, a rising star, really. A fashion model in L.A.
Yeah, she'd been signed since she was just 14, and she was even runner-up in the Miss Teen USA competition back in 2013.
But she was more than just a model, right?
Oh, absolutely. The sources paint her as this free spirit, but also incredibly disciplined. She was a top high school soccer player, got multiple scholarship offers for college. Yeah. And she was married to Jan, who's an artist and photographer. They sort of embodied that successful, creative LA lifestyle, And
her friend, Hilda Marcela Cabrales Arzola, she was 26, also incredibly accomplished.
Yes, an architect.
A successful architect, yeah.
Yep.
Originally from Mexico, graduated with honors there, even studied more in South Korea. Then she landed a role as a project manager right here in LA.
So these were two smart, established young women, just out for a night together.
Exactly. And that night was November 12th, 2021, a Friday. It started pretty normally. Dinner at a place called the Show House in West Hollywood with another friend.
Okay.
Then they moved on to a warehouse party in downtown LA.
Right. And Christy was posting video stuff on social media.
Yeah.
Showing them having fun, looking totally normal. Nothing seemed off.
No.
But the thing that turned out to be the absolute cornerstone for the investigation later, Jan, her husband, he was actually 5 hours away visiting his dad.
Right.
But he and Christy had real-time location sharing turned on between their phones. That simple safety step. It became forensic gold. It really did. That constant connection, that digital breadcrumb trail, it meant that when things went terribly wrong, they weren't just guessing. They had a ping leading right to the suspect's location.
Okay, so here's where the timeline takes that first really dark turn. It's early Saturday morning now, November 13th.
Yeah.
Around 4:45 a.m., Christy and Hilda leave the warehouse party. And they go to an apartment complex in West Los Angeles, which we now know from the sources is where David Pierce lived.
And this is where the red flags just immediately shoot up for Jan. He wakes up later that morning, checks her location like he probably normally would,
Right.
and sees her phone is just stationary at this weird address. She's not answering texts, not picking up calls, and he knows instantly this is not like Christy at all.
He got so worried, apparently, that he actually posted the location on social media, just asking if anyone knew anything, if anyone could help.
Yeah, kind of desperate move, but it worked.
It did. Chillingly fast. He learned the apartment belonged to David Pierce, a Hollywood producer, and Jan was apparently already familiar with Pierce's reputation.
Which wasn't good.
No. Specifically, stories about him, luring women, assaulting them, harming them, especially within the entertainment industry.
So that gut feeling Jan had that something was seriously wrong, it was immediately amplified by knowing whose apartment it was.
Then there's the last piece of actual communication, and
Yes.
it's terrifying. Around 5:38 a.m., Chrissy sends a text message to Hilda. It just says, "Let's get out of here." And she includes that wide-eyed emoji, the one.
Yeah, like panic.
Exactly.
Oh.
Hilda reads the text, she replies. And she immediately calls an Uber to that apartment complex.
That text, it just screams immediate danger, realizing they needed to leave right now. But here's the critical part, the really chilling part.
What's that?
The Uber arrives, the driver waits for 5 minutes, standard procedure, but nobody comes out.
Nobody.
And the driver can't get through to Hilda. But what investigators found crucial is this. After that Uber was called, both Christie's and Hilda's phones just went dead silent. No more texts, no calls, no location movement, nothing.
Implying something happened right then.
It signals an immediate successful incapacitation right at the moment they were trying to escape. Something stopped them cold.
And that silence, it stretched for hours. The timeline jumps forward now quite a bit.
Yeah.
And the events become just horrifyingly clear.
Yeah.
It's 5:00 p.m. now, that same Saturday. Jan is watching the location tracker, and suddenly he sees Christie's location move to a hospital in L.A. He calls the hospital, frantic, but they won't give him any information. Protocol, maybe, but incredibly frustrating for him. Eventually, Christie's mother had to make the call to get confirmation.
And the confirmation was the worst possible news. Christy was found dead. She'd been dumped, just left on the sidewalk near the hospital entrance.
Left there.
Yeah, resuscitation attempts didn't work. She was gone.
But the nightmare wasn't even over. Only about 2 hours later, Hilda is found.
Different hospital.
A different hospital nearby, also dumped outside, unconscious.
She was alive, but barely. In a deep coma, suffering from multiple organ failure. Her heart actually stopped while they were treating her, but doctors managed to bring her back with CPR.
Just unimaginable. So what was the initial police response? Because you have 2 women dumped outside hospitals.
Well, the initial response really hinged on the first pathology report for Christy. It found high levels of several substances in her system: cocaine, heroin, amphetamines.
Okay.
And based largely on that, law enforcement initially leaned towards, or even ruled it, an accidental overdose.
But that finding must have felt immediately wrong, right? Especially to the family. You mentioned Christie's background.
Exactly. That's the key point the family raised immediately. They vehemently disagreed. Christy was a former athlete, disciplined, and crucially, she hated heroin.
Why specifically heroin?
She'd lost an ex-boyfriend and also a cousin to it. It was something she felt very strongly about. So the idea she'd voluntarily take it just didn't sit right with anyone who knew her.
And there were no signs of a struggle.
No defensive wounds, no physical trauma suggesting a fight, which to the family pointed towards her being incapacitated before anything else happened. Their theory, fueled by Pierce's reputation, was that they were drugged.
Like with date rape drugs.
Yes, possibly date rape drugs, then likely assaulted, and then things went fatally wrong, perhaps intentionally. They believed it was murder masked as an overdose.
And the dumping outside the hospital, that doesn't exactly scream accident.
Not at all. It screams cover-up. But it took the family's absolute insistence and growing public pressure to make the police look beyond just the toxicology and consider the whole context: the dumping, the timeline, the text message.
And tragically, Hilda, she never woke up from the coma.
No. Her brain had been deprived of oxygen for too long. About 2 weeks later, actually, on her 27th birthday, her family had to make that impossible decision to remove life support, and she passed away.
So with the official investigation seemingly stalled on the overdose theory, Jan and the families basically started their own investigation.
Yeah. They did. They launched a GoFundMe page, partly for funeral costs, but also explicitly to fund their own investigation.
And that got attention.
Huge attention. And critically, it did something else. It brought other women forward. Women who saw the story recognized the name David Pierce and said they'd survived similar predatory encounters with him.
Let's talk about him. David Pierce, 37 years old at the time, a Hollywood producer.
Yeah.
What did the sources reveal about his history?
It wasn't pretty. The sources indicate a long history of alleged sexual misconduct, stretching way back, maybe to 2010.
A decade.
Yeah. Multiple victims came forward alleging a pattern, drugging them to facilitate rape, physical abuse, making extreme sexual demands. It suggested this wasn't some isolated tragic mistake. It was potentially a known pattern of behavior.
In Jan's investigation, using the location data of the texts, it started yielding more concrete evidence.
Absolutely. Damning evidence, because it shifted the narrative away from accidental overdose and squarely towards premeditated cover-up. The first really big piece was CCTV footage.
The hospital footage.
Well, footage related to the dumping. It hasn't been released publicly, but reports confirm it showed exactly what the family feared.
What did it show?
3 men, masked, all dressed in black, getting out of a black Toyota Prius and dumping Christie's body on the sidewalk.
Masked men.
Masked men. And they'd gone to the trouble of removing the license plates from the car?
Wow. That's not panic. That's planned disposal.
Precisely. It suggests a coordinated effort to eliminate evidence connecting them to her death, not the actions of people caught up in an accidental tragedy.
And then there was testimony from neighbors near Pierce's apartment, apartment 8 and 641.
Yes. This is also deeply disturbing. Neighbors reported hearing sounds from Pierce's apartment on that Saturday. Not just noise, but crying and agonizing sounds.
Agonizing sounds. For how long?
For 6 to 7 continuous hours?
6 or 7 hours. That completely blows the quick overdose theory out of the water, doesn't it?
Absolutely demolishes it. A fast-acting voluntary overdose doesn't involve 6 or 7 hours of agonizing sounds. That length of time strongly suggests something else entirely. A prolonged struggle, perhaps against incapacitation, or a horrific reaction to whatever substances were involved. Maybe drug-facilitated assault followed by a slow, terrible decline.
And the final piece, the scientific confirmation.
The detailed lab tests. Eventually they came back, and they confirmed what the family suspected all along.
What did they find?
The presence of a date rape drug, specifically a GHB analog in the systems of both Christy and Hilda.
GHB. So not just the street drugs initially found.
Right, and GHB or its analogs, that's critical. It's a powerful central nervous system depressant. It causes rapid incapacitation, confusion, memory loss, amnesia.
Which would explain the lack of defensive wounds.
Exactly, and potentially the agonizing sounds if the dose wasn't immediately fatal but caused distress. And it certainly explains why they couldn't get out to meet that Uber even though they desperately wanted to.
So the picture becomes much clearer and much darker. They were likely given the GHB analog first to incapacitate them, maybe for assault.
That's the strong implication.
And then the other drugs, like the heroin that Christy hated, maybe that was administered while they were already unconscious, leading to the fatal overdose. The death becomes homicide, facilitated by the drugging.
Precisely. The GHB analog explains the likely assault and incapacitation. The other drugs explain the mechanism of death, and the dumping explains the cover-up. The initial accidental overdose finding just didn't count for any of that sequence.
So with all this mounting evidence, the texts, the location data, the neighbor testimony, the CCTV, the GHB confirmation, and the public pressure, the police finally moved.
Yes. In December 2021, arrests were made. David Pierce was arrested, charged with the murders of both Christy and Hilda.
And sexual assault charges, too.
Yes, murder and sexual assault relating to Christy and Hilda. Plus, they bundled in charges related to those multiple historical sexual abuse allegations, the ones dating back to 2010.
Showing that alleged pattern.
Exactly. His bail was set incredibly high, eventually reaching $3.4 million, reflecting the severity and scope of the charges.
And the other men from the CCTV footage.
2 others were arrested. Michael Ansbach, who was 47, a former TV cameraman, and Brandon Osborne, 42, apparently an actor and Pierce's roommate at the time.
What were they charged with?
Accessory to murder. Their bail was set at $1 million each.
So the narrative the prosecution seems to be building is Pierce invites the women back to apartment 8641, maybe for an after party. They're drugged with the GHB analog, assaulted. And then, when they overdose, possibly because of the GHB combined with other administered drugs, Pierce and his associates panic, not out of concern, but out of self-preservation.
Right. They try to dispose of the evidence, the bodies, making it look like something that happens somewhere else entirely. As you said, masked men removing license plates. That's not consistent with a voluntary overdose.
And this case is still ongoing, right? The legal battle continues.
That's right. The defendants are fighting the charges. It's working its way through the legal system.
It's just a truly awful story. And it really highlights how power and privilege, maybe status and connections in a place like Hollywood, can sometimes create this space where predatory behavior can happen, maybe even flourish for years.
It really does underscore that. But it also shows the power of persistence. The absolute refusal of Jan, the families, to just accept the easy answer, their fight, and the bravery of other women who came forward sharing their own alleged experiences with Pierce. That's what forced the truth out.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How often does the initial convenient explanation stick when maybe it shouldn't? This case feels like a powerful example of how crucial public attention and, frankly, victim advocacy can be in forcing the system to look deeper.
Yeah, the investigation turned not because of some sudden miracle, but because people wouldn't let it go. They connected the dots the authorities initially missed or ignored. The digital trail, the neighbors' ears, the past victims' voices. It was all there.
What really stands out in this deep dive, for me, is that transition. From a potential tragedy dismissed as lifestyle risk to a calculated crime exposed by sheer determination. The power wasn't initially with the official investigation. It was with a grieving husband and the collective strength of survivors demanding the truth hidden behind the door of apartment AT641. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we walked through these difficult sources and the really tough questions they bring up.
Until next time, keep digging deeper and always question that first story you hear.